Okay, Bula Binaka, and very good afternoon to you all. I think we'll make a proper start with our program this afternoon. My name is Mikael Embeliana, Director of Energy, and I will be moderating the launching of the SDG Roadmap 7 for this afternoon. Just to give maybe a very good afternoon to you all, and also a good morning to our team from UNESCAP, who are joining us from Bangkok. Bula Binaka to you all. Just before we start with the program proper, ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to give a brief background on the SDG 7 roadmap that we're going to launch today. The roadmap was the outcome of the ministerial meeting that was held in Bangkok in 2018. And in that meeting, UNESCAP have come up with this tool, the next step tool, the National Expert SDG tool for energy planning, which is to assist member countries develop the SDG 7 roadmap. And in Fiji, we had started the process in 2020. We had a consultation meeting in 2020, and there were another few other consultation meetings that followed after that. And we had finalized a report at the end of 2020. In fact, we had planned to launch the report last year, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic and other unforeseen circumstances, there was a bit of delay. But fortunately, Cabinet has endorsed a report early this year. And today we are here to officially launch the SDG 7 roadmap. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we had a few speakers that will be delivering keynote address for us this afternoon. First on the list is Ms. Amida Salsia Alice Jabana, the Executive Secretary of the United Nations and Social Commission of Asia and the Pacific. She's also the Under Secretary General of the United Nations. Mrs. Alisa Jabana has been demonstrating excellent leadership to enhance the sustainable development in Asia and the Pacific, in particular the achievement of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement. So without further ado, I'll invite Ms. Amida to deliver the welcome remarks.
Thank you very much. Excellency Mr. Joni Usamate, Minister of Infrastructure and Meteorological Services Fiji, Mr. Sanaka Samarasinghe, UNRC, Fiji, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon and good morning. Greetings from Bangkok. I would like to welcome you to this launch of Fiji's roadmap for achieving Sustainable Development Goal 7. Since the adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, Asia and the Pacific have been working steadfastly to achieve the SDGs. At the heart is goal on energy, which is SDG 7. For more than 2 years now, COVID-19 pandemic has severely affected countries in this region, including Fiji. Frequent tropical cyclones continue to disrupt countries in Pacific and certainly as in Fiji as well. Protecting the energy infrastructure and supplying the population with reliable and uninterrupted energy remains a challenge for the government. Transitioning to a sustainable, secure, and least cost energy system can form a key part of the sustainable recovery. Progressing the transition to sustainable energy, guided by SDG 7, offers a means to increase the resilience of the energy sector, such as by increasing decentralized renewable energy system and reducing reliance on imported energy. This reliance on imported fossil fuel increases the Pacific region's vulnerability to supply disruption as well as fuel price spikes. Burning fossil fuel leads to more air pollution and is not compatible with the long-term climate goals agreed to by the Pacific countries. Fiji is fortunate in its endowment of renewable energy resources, not only hydropower, but also other renewable energy sources in abundance, such as wind, solar, and biomass. Thus, Fiji is very well positioned to be a leader of a green transformation built on sustainable and modern energy for all. With the sharp decline in the cost of renewable energy technology, the economic feasibility of moving towards a system largely based on sustainable energy is becoming clearer than ever. The energy transition is also in line with the Samoa pathway, emphasizing the urgent need to build renewable energy-based energy system for the Pacific. Minister Usamate, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Fiji has demonstrated its leadership by developing one of the first SDG7 roadmap in the Pacific. I would like to congratulate the government of Fiji for achieving this very important milestone. This roadmap presents a set of technological options and recommended policy measures that form a pathway for Fiji to achieve SDG7. It suggests that an early ramp-up of renewable power generation will provide a larger financial benefit and pave the path towards 100% renewable power goal by 2036. The roadmap has recommended a focus on energy efficiency measures in the marine transport sector, an important area for Fiji and other Pacific countries. The roadmap presents a detailed economic analysis for the energy transition to help policymakers make informed decisions. It offers a number of measures to leverage the least cost sustainable energy development and the direct investment savings to other critical sectors, which will help recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm very happy to know that SG7 roadmap has contributed to the development of the Fiji National Energy Policy. This represents an ideal outcome where the analysis in the SDG7 roadmap can directly support the development of national policies and strategies. I'm also very glad to hear that the SDG7 roadmap has secured the approval of the National Cabinet. This is a sign of the strong political commitment of Fiji to achieving SDG7. Minister Usamate, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the government of Fiji, particularly to the Ministry of Infrastructure and Meteorological Services and the Ministry of Economy for their continued leadership, cooperation, and support in developing the SDG7 roadmap. I'm also thankful to our partner, the GGGI, the Global Green Growth Institute, for its excellent work facilitating this initiative. This roadmap is not the endpoint of our collaboration with the government of Fiji, but rather we will seek future opportunities for collaboration to ensure that the recommendations are implemented in achieving the SDG7 and nationally determined contribution targets by 2030. I've requested our office in Suva to remain in close contact with the government of Fiji to discuss opportunities for future collaboration. I'm confident that Fiji will continue to lead the way in building a secure, resilient, and sustainable energy future for the Pacific region and beyond. Taking this opportunity, I would like again to thank the Honorable Minister, Mr. Usamate, for serving as the chair of the third session of the Committee on Energy last year in February 2021. We appreciate your support for regional cooperation on sustainable energy and count on your continued leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mrs. Amida, for those insightful welcoming remarks. I will now ask Mr. Sanaka Samarshila to deliver his welcome remarks.
Thank you very much. First of all, Under Secretary General, Executive Secretary, Honorable Minister, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, let me just say what a great pleasure it is for me to be here with you today. This is a momentous point I believe, in Fiji's history. I don't want to underscore, I don't think I can underscore enough what an important point we are in the context of Fiji's modernization plans. I'm delighted to join you for the launch of the SDG 7 roadmap for Fiji. I'd also like to extend warm congratulations to the Ministry of Infrastructure and Meteorological Services and ESCAP for achieving this great milestone. This is particularly timely given Fiji is currently developing its national energy policy. As many of you know, Fiji faces some challenges related to energy use, particularly in providing modern and affordable energy to its remote islands. Globally, a third of the world's population use dangerous and inefficient cooking systems, and close to 760 million people lack access to electricity. Like your Pacific neighbors, Fiji is also prone to natural disasters, most of which cause disruptions to energy supply to Fijians in remote areas. Climate-linked extreme weather increases the frequency and severity of devastating flooding, droughts, and wildfires, leading to population displacement, loss of livelihoods and lives. Sadly, we've seen this across the Pacific: Fiji, Vanuatu, Tonga, Samoa, and many other countries. And to most of us, for many of us, we've experienced this firsthand. In addition to existing difficulties, COVID-19, of course, has also increased the socioeconomic challenges faced by all Fijians. So, transitioning to sustainable, affordable energy that reaches everyone is a key consideration for Fiji. This transition, amongst other things, will result in better living conditions for Fijians, improved national productivity, and more jobs, all the while supporting Fiji's ambition to reduce reliance on imported fossil fuel. As of 2019, over 60% of electricity generated locally has been through renewable means. I would like to commend Fiji as a strong climate champions you are for remaining committed to increasing the use of renewable energy sources well into the future. Our global energy transformation can and must include universal access to energy, which will open up incredible new opportunities and help end deep inequalities. As you explore energy transition in Fiji, focus should be placed on two key areas: access and investment. This will not be an easy task, but the benefits will be well worth our collective efforts. Firstly, on access, the SDG 7 roadmap has correctly identified that achieving universal access to clean cooking fuels and technologies is one of the most challenging tasks in Fiji. In addition to providing the remaining half of the population with access to clean cooking technologies and fuels, we need to simultaneously improve energy efficiency, increase renewable energy resources, and reduce reliance on imported fossil fuels. Achieving this target is also important to ensure better health and well-being of more than half of the country's population who currently cook with biomass. And secondly, on investment. The energy transition in Fiji needs to prioritize building the capacity of energy planners, attracting private sector investment, and regional cooperation. When it comes to the power sector, Fiji is endowed with abundant renewable energy resources. However, Fiji's energy sector, specifically with regards to transport, is still heavily reliant on imported fossil fuels. This, together with the rapid cost reduction of renewable energy systems, offers the opportunity for Fiji to fully decarbonize its power sector. Increased renewable power generation will also help Fijians to move towards electric mobility, a key element to reducing fossil fuel imports. Whilst the roadmap has recommended enabling policy measures and technological options, implementation of these recommendations will be critical to achieving the SDG 7 targets by 2030. Full commitment by the Fijian government and the timely mobilization of resources will be necessary as you progress forward. Private sector investment is an important complement to public investment. The UN Secretary General opened the ministerial thematic forums of the high-level dialogue on energy last year, and he said, I quote, "Achieving universal energy access is crucial for delivering on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. As we strive to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, we have an opportunity to chart a sustainable future." Last year, when we addressed the topics event hosted in Nandi, we referred to the pandemic as the unsolicited opportunity because it has forced us to reset much of how we operate and live. This could transform our future for the better, especially for the generations to come. I wanted to particularly mention here, Executive Secretary and Minister, my conversations with those engaged in the tourism industry here in Fiji, up in Palau and in Vanuatu in particular. I think that this presents an incredible opportunity as we look at reopened borders and we look at tourism not just going back to its previous levels, but perhaps exceeding targets that we had never imagined. We must not build back an industry that was like it was before COVID. This is an opportunity really to make this industry much better than it was. And it is also in line with the commitments made in Glasgow to have a zero emission tourist industry in the coming years. The SDG 7 roadmap has been developed through several consultations with stakeholders at all levels under the coordination of the Department of Energy, Ministry of Economy, and the Global Green Growth Institute. My sincere appreciation to everyone involved. I'm also glad that the National Cabinet has endorsed the roadmap, which demonstrates that the whole of Fijian government is committed to achieving SDG 7. At the end of 2020, I presented Prime Minister Bainimarama the UN's Champion of the Earth Award on behalf of the UN Secretary General. Knowing him and knowing you, Minister Usamata, quite well, I'm aware that for you, ensuring energy efficiency in our collective effort to save the planet is a top priority. It is no enviable task to undertake a truly inclusive economy-wide energy analysis, including building scenarios on national plans and strategies. It is even more challenging given the COVID-19 crisis you are managing. But it is also an opportunity, as I mentioned before. And as for the UN, as the Executive Secretary has called on us, we will make sure as we draft the new cooperation framework for the Pacific and for Fiji for the next 5 years, starting in 2023, to put energy efficiency and support to you in implementing your own commitments as a priority as well. As we chart a sustainable future together, let us keep the most vulnerable people at the center and ensure that while we discuss their needs, they also have a seat at the table. Together, we can make SDG 7 a reality in Fiji, across the Pacific and around the world. Minaka Vakalevu, Dhanyavad, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sanaka, for those delightful and enlightening remarks. I will now call upon the Minister for Infrastructure and Meteorological Services, the Honorable Johnny Usamate, to deliver the keynote address.
Thank you, Ms. Armida Salcia Alice Jabana, Under Secretary General of the United Nations, and the Executive Secretary of UNESCAP, Mr. Hong Peng Liu, Director Energy Division for UNESCAP, Mr. Sanaka Samarashina, UN Residential Coordinator for Fiji, and Mr. Daniel Muner-Smith, the Global Green Growth Institute Country Representative for Fiji. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Bulavinaka and good afternoon to you all from Vatukola in Fiji. It is my great pleasure to deliver the keynote address today at this important event on the launch of the Sustainable Development Goal 7 Roadmap for Fiji. At the outset, I would like to extend our sincere gratitude to UNESCAP and the Global Green Growth Institute for supporting my ministry and supporting Fiji on the development of this roadmap. I know that the launch should have taken place at the end of last year, but unfortunately, as has been expressed by our Director Energy, it was delayed to some unforeseen circumstances from our side. And I wish to thank you all for your patience and for bearing with us. However, I believe the launch of the roadmap today has come at the right time. Ladies and gentlemen, the political instability currently taking place between Russia and Ukraine will have long-term devastating impacts on our global economy. For us in the small island developing states, which are located at the end of the oil supply chain, small economy and market size, the impacts will be quite severe and inevitable. Just this week, the price of fuel in Fiji have gone up again by a significant percentage. This is the beginning of an uncertain future, and this situation may continue to exist if the political instability prolongs and extends. Ladies and gentlemen, the SDG Goal 7 specifically aims to ensure that the world has access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. This goal brings together the three pillars of sustainable development, namely economic, social, and environmental. The SDG 7 inculcates three important objectives that include, first, by 2030, to ensure universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy services. Secondly, by 2030, double the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency. And third, by 2030, increase substantially the share of renewable energy in the global energy mix. This roadmap has clearly outlined the pathways and policy direction for Fiji to implement to achieve the intertwined objectives of SDG 7. Achieving these SDG 7 targets will fulfill Fiji's commitment to the Paris Agreement and to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Despite the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, the devastating impacts of climate change, together with our current economic downturn, we have been making progressive strides towards transforming and decarbonizing our energy sector. Government in Fiji is committed to increase its share of renewable energy to more than 90% by the year 2030, and to increase the percentage of our population that has access to electricity to 100% by the year 2026. In addition, government is working with non-governmental organizations to promote the use of clean cooking technologies and fuels. The roadmap has highlighted four important policy directions, which include, number one, ramping up of renewable power capacity and paving the path towards 100% renewable electricity by the year 2036. Second, promoting of electric cooking stoves and LPG stoves as long-term solutions to achieving universal clean cooking access. Third, taking a multi-sectoral approach to realizing energy efficiency improvements potential. And fourth, achieving substantial energy savings and emissions reduction through transport sector energy efficiency measures. To achieve these targets will require a concerted and holistic effort with all our stakeholders. We need to put in place the right policy frameworks and enabling environment that will attract the participation of private actors and investors in the energy sector. This is what we intend to do over the next few years. To conclude, I wish to thank UNSCAP and GGGI for working in collaboration and partnership with government on the development of this roadmap. It is this kind of engagement that we need to forge and strengthen to achieve our commitments and targets. With those few words, I thank you all for your kind attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Usamati, for those delightful and insightful keynote address. The next agenda on item, ladies and gentlemen, is the launch of the SDG 7 roadmap for Fiji. I would request our honorable speakers, the Honorable Chone Usamate, Mrs. Amida, and Mr. Sanaka, if you can please turn on your camera. And you'll be required to hold the cover page of the roadmap. And we have our media team that will be taking photos of the launch.
Excuse me for the business is very unclear. One second. Can you move the publication a bit closer? I'm really see.
We also have the media team with us and also the television companies that are here with us that will also be taking photos of the launching of the report this afternoon. So to our chief guest, if you are ready, if you can just turn on your camera while you also be required to hold the cover page of the report. And our media team are ready to take the photos.
Can you see my photo?
No, sir.
See my photo?
So you may need to remove the virtual background.
Oh, remove the virtual background. Remove the virtual background.
Blurred background.
Anis, please let us know if your team are ready.
Yes, Mika, we have taken the screenshot, so you can proceed. Thank you.
All right, all is good now.
Can you see it now?
So we can see.
Yes, Mika, all clear.
You see me?
Outside, we can see that.
Yes, very well.
Am I visible?
All is good now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for our chief guest for the launch of the report for the SDG 7 for Fiji. So I think that's the pinnacle of our meeting this afternoon with regards to the launch of the SDG 7 roadmap. So ladies and gentlemen, we'll move on to the next session. There will be a presentation from Mr. Anis Zaman, the Economic Affairs Officer of UNSCAP, who will be taking us through a brief overview of the SDG 7 roadmap for Fiji.
Thank you, Mika. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to be able to speak on this great occasion of launch of the SDG 7 roadmap for Fiji. May I take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to all of you for taking time to join the event and to support the launch of this important report. What I'll do, I'll briefly summarize the key findings and recommendations from the SDG 7 roadmap. As a quick background, the ministerial declaration of the Second Asian Pacific Energy Forum that was held in April 2018 in Bangkok mandated the Secretariat to support ESCAP member states in developing national SDG 7 roadmaps to help achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement. Therefore, it is a need that was expressed by the member states, which demonstrate the commitment of our region to achieving the SDG 7 goal. Just a glimpse of what the entire process involved. It started with an inception workshop back in July 2020. Then there has been an intensive process of data collection, modeling, and analysis. Several consultations were conducted, not only with the ministry and other agencies, but also with wider stakeholders of the energy sector. Finally, the roadmap was finalized in June 2021. The roadmap was submitted to the Cabinet Office for consideration and was endorsed on 27 January this year. And today we are doing the official launch of the roadmap. 2018 has been used as the baseline for the analysis, as there were all of the data that was needed for this analysis. This identified that there is a substantial gap in the current policy environment to achieve universal access to clean cooking fuel. Renewable energy share in the total final energy consumption will need to increase further, and energy efficiency will need to drop to 2.18 megajoule per US dollar by 2030 to achieve the SDG 7 target for energy efficiency. The three core scenarios we have developed are the current policy scenario, which helps to understand the current context and assists in identifying the gap. The SDGs scenario, which is the core scenario, informs us what needs to be done to achieve SDG 7 and NDC targets. The Raising Ambition scenario examines the potential for Fiji to aim beyond achieving just the SDG 7 targets to further augment the effort on sustainable energy transition. Looking at some key findings and recommendations from the roadmap, the historical trend analysis indicates that the access to electricity will be achieved by 2024. So what means that Fiji is not far away from achieving this universal target for electricity. However, for clean cooking, next step analysis suggests that electric cooking stoves may be more appropriate technology in terms of health benefits, cost effectiveness, and little maintenance and follow-up requirements. However, feedback from the stakeholders suggested that it would be a good idea to make different options available, including electric and LPG cooking stoves to cater different segments of population. Nevertheless, it is important that all agencies together make a concerted effort with targeted programs to accelerate the clean cooking access and ensure achievement of universal access by 2030. Energy efficiency improvement has been identified as the other key action that Fiji will need to undertake across all major economic sectors. and that there are ample opportunities to do so. If we look at the residential sector, the roadmap recommends minimum energy performance standards and labeling, which has already been implemented for refrigerators and freezers since 2012. The roadmap recommends to introduce MEPSL for various other household appliances, namely lighting, televisions, and air conditioners. In the transport sector, the roadmap recommended energy efficiency measures, which will include introduction of hybrid vehicles and introduction of minimum fuel economy standards for land transports, and gradual adoption of operational efficiency such as hull coating and cleaning and propeller polishing for vessels more than 15 meters long, which are applicable to the marine transport. Adoption of electric vehicles has been recommended in the ambitious scenario when a higher share of renewable energy is achieved in the power sector. In the commercial sector, our roadmap recommends adoption of green building measures in half of government buildings and all newly constructed private buildings. Looking at renewable energy, the current energy system relies heavily on oil products, which is 89% and mostly being used in the transport sector and a small portion being used in the electricity generation sector. Renewable energy share in the SDG scenario was estimated using the NDC unconditional target as a constraint, which is a 10% reduction compared to the baseline. This will lead to an increase in the renewable energy share to 14.5%, but just a little small increase from the current policy scenario, which has been possible due to the energy efficiency measures discussed in the previous slide. This means that Fiji would be able to achieve its unconditional NDC target simply by introducing energy efficiency measures, which is also found to be cost-effective way. At this stage, renewable energy share in electricity generation would be 71% in the SDG scenario. The roadmap also examined the potential for 100% decarbonization of the power sector, which has been found to be possible and economically feasible. If we do this scenario, then the share of solar PV, hydro, biomass, and wind will be about 46.7, 45.9, 6.4, and 1% respectively. The total investment required to do so would be $872 million for up to 2036. The reduced reliance on imported oil products allows a high net benefit of totaling up to $2.3 billion, which is quite significant. In this scenario, a higher penetration of electric vehicle is recommended to leverage the carbon-free electricity to reduce emissions and reliance on petroleum fossil fuel. As mentioned earlier, that in the SDG scenario, Fiji would be able to achieve its unconditional NDC target and largely with the implementation of energy efficiency measures. The roadmap also identified that if Fiji is able to implement the ambitious scenario, which is a combination of power sector decarbonization and higher penetration of electric vehicles, it would also be able to achieve and essentially exceed the conditional NDC target of 30% emissions reduction. Here we have given some marginal abatement cost curve, which demonstrate that most of the energy efficiency measures that have been recommended are cost effective. Either they have negative costs or very small positive costs. The next step also has an online portal and all the available recommendations findings and results are available in this energy portal, and it can be accessed by anyone from anywhere. Please feel free to browse through the portal. And if you have any question, please let us know. The roadmap document is available on the ESCAP website. You are very welcome to visit the link provided or scan the QR code given here. Please do let us know if you need any assistance or if you have any questions. With this, I will stop here and will hand over the floor back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anis, for that brief overview on the SDG roadmap. The next session, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have some panel discussion. So I'll hand over again to Mr. Anis to moderate the session.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So I'm back again. On this occasion, it would be great to hear some reflections, experiences, and thoughts from our distinguished panelists about the roadmap, as well as the works that are being carried out by different organizations, agencies in relation to the energy transition. So we are very fortunate to have a panel of highly knowledgeable and experienced professionals who have been involved in different aspects of supporting Fiji's journey with the energy transition and climate change issues. First, please allow me to introduce the panelists. We have Mr. Krishnil Prasad, General Manager, Special Projects, Energy Fiji Limited. Mr. Daniel Land, Climate Change and International Cooperation Division of Ministry of Economic Government of Fiji. We have Ms. Katerina Singalakis, Pacific Regional Advisor of Global Green Growth Institute. We also have Mr. Sudeep Ranjan Basu, Deputy Head of ESCAP Pacific Office in Fiji. Would be delighted to hear from you on things like how important are the SDG 7 targets in shaping the sustainable energy transition pathway for the Pacific, and specifically for Fiji. What are the activities your organization or agency is undertaking to help build the sustainable energy transition pathway for the region? And also, if you could also focus on some of the aspects for Fiji. In carrying out these activities, what are the challenges that your organization has faced, and how those have been? How has been the experience going through this process? If you had a chance to look at the SDG 7 roadmap, we would be glad to hear from you your thoughts on appropriateness of the SDG 7 roadmap in advancing its sustainable energy transition. Please feel free to highlight if there is any other area where regional cooperation through ESCAP could further strengthen Fiji's capacity to achieve SDG 7 and NDC. And you are also welcome to make any other remarks that you may wish to do. So with this, first, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Krishnil Prasad, who may also highlight some of the current and future plans of Energy Fiji Limited in advancing the needed energy transition. So Mr. Prasad, you have the floor.
Thank you, Anis, and good afternoon to all, I would say, participants in this launch, and good afternoon to the Honorable Minister for Infrastructure and Meteorological Services, and also to the local UN resident rep and coordinator, and the other distinguished delegates who are actually joining us today. Now, as you may be aware, EFL is a EFL has been in existence since April 2018. Prior to that, it used to be the Fiji Electricity Authority. EFL, I would say, is responsible for generation, transmission, and distribution and retailing of electricity on 4 main islands: Viti Levu, Vanua Levu, Ovalau, and Tavyuni. And Viti Levu being the largest with we'd say more than 90% of generation and sales being focused on Viti Levu. The others are relatively small power systems, now, just in terms of numbers, EFL in the last, we'd say, a normal year, which was 2019, pre-COVID, generated and sold about 950 gigawatt hours of electricity. So that's a significant amount, and out of that, about 55% of it was produced from renewable energy sources. Now, it's on Viti Levu, we have most of our renewable energy plants, which is the hydropower stations. Each Vanua Levu is, we have got a small hydropower plant, and also we buy some energy from FSC. Tavyuni, purely hydro at the moment, and we are working with donor agencies to develop a solar power plant. Ovalau is one island where we are strongly focusing on right now to introduce a renewable energy power plant. Each of the islands have got their unique challenges in terms of the resources that are available. So for EFL, it is actually, I will say, an opportunity, to innovate, to find innovative solutions, to actually address the ambitious targets that are set in the SDG 7 roadmap, and we are actively working towards it. Now, as I think one of the key targets that the minister highlighted and that has also been touched upon is to improve or to reach the 90% renewable energy generation by 2030, and then go 100% by 2036. From EFL's perspective, that is hugely ambitious, and some of the challenges or some of the ways in which we feel that we need to address it are finding good, reliable energy sources. While I know that there is now a huge focus on introducing solar and other means, which can become big components of our future generation sources. For EFL, also important is energy security. The economy actually thrives on a reliable and a stable electricity supply system, so we are mindful of that, and we are working with industry partners and with donor agencies and with private sector participants to actually incorporate and build and we'll say transition towards having a generation mix that's heavily favored towards renewable energy power sources. Now, the other area that EFL is working towards with stakeholders is energy efficiency, which has been touched upon. A lot of the focus on energy efficiency has been towards the consumer end, but from EFL side, the way that we generate, the way that we transmit, we feel that we can also make it more efficient by using equipment that has less technical loss, and by using systems that are more efficient. So we are actually also working towards ensuring that what we call a power system loss is also minimized. So from a generation, transmission, and distribution perspective, we have a very high efficiency level and very low loss as far as energy production and you'd say transmission is concerned. I think for improving access, which is another aspect of the SDG 7 goals, we are working closely with the Fijian government, which contributes heavily towards extending and improving electricity access, and in the last, I would say in the last 10 years, significant investment and significant effort has actually been placed into extending the coverage. So if you look at the last census which was undertaken, there was a significant improvement in the communities and the people who have access to some form of electricity. And now we are actually working with the Fijian government to ensure that the electricity systems that are available to people are more reliable, and they have high, you'd say, higher levels of security, and also sustainable. So people where, there are communities, or there are people who used to have maybe access to electricity for a few hours in a day. We are now trying to work with the government to ensure that they have access to 24 hours reliable electricity supply. So that's an area that we are also working and strongly focusing on with the government, and we will continue to do that until the government's target for having that 100% electricity access by 2026 is actually achieved. So I think from EFL, we are committed in ensuring that the ambitious targets that are set in the SDG 7 roadmap that the Fijian government has adopted is actually met, and we would continue to work towards identifying projects and actually schemes and systems which will help us meet those targets, and hopefully we are able to meet them much earlier than what has been outlined as the target years, and we look forward to, I will say, the cooperation of the United Nations, UNESCO, and also the Fijian government and other key stakeholders such as GGGI, who have worked with us in the past and who I know will continue to work with us. With those few words, Anis, I think I would just like to conclude, and thank you very much for allowing EFL to be a participant in this launch activity and also be part of the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prasad, for your excellent remarks and thoughtfulness information. It's great to hear that EFL is really working to find innovative solutions to support the energy transition. And also you have mentioned that EFL is actively working towards supporting the achievement of SDG 7, which is really great to hear. So we understand that there are some challenges, probably quite a big challenge to achieve this 100% renewable energy power generation by 2036. But I'm sure with the cooperation from all sides and agencies, you will be able to achieve that target. It's good to hear that energy security is being considered as an important element going forward for EFL, and also you are focusing on energy efficiency. And it was also good to note that EFL is trying to provide access to electricity for everyone, and not only looking at the connection, but also the quality of electricity. So it's great. I think EFL is working very hard, and at some point, EFL will be able to achieve all those targets and plans that are in place. So thank you once again. Now, I would like to request Mr. Daniel Lund, who may also enlighten us on the plans and policies and activities of the Climate Change Office. This office has the responsibility of overseeing the NDC target. As such, it has a great role in energy transition as well. So, Mr. Lund, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Anis, and good afternoon, everyone. Particularly great to hear from the Honourable Minister of Infrastructure. Thank you to the Executive Secretary of UNESCAP, UN Resident Coordinator, Director of Energy, distinguished colleagues and panelists. Pleased to provide some reactions to the SDG 7 roadmap today on behalf of the Ministry of Economy and the Climate Change Unit. It's certainly been a very timely piece of work, given that around the time in which the SDG 7 roadmap was being considered for approval and drafts were being circulated, Fiji was, of course, in the process of finalizing the Climate Change Act, which passed in September of last year. And I think what the SDG 7 roadmap does help to do is provide some options and scenarios for understanding different ways Fiji's policy objectives and implementation of the Fiji's NDC can play out into the future. And this is very much in line with the current national climate change policy, which calls for the use very explicitly of multi-criteria analysis for decision making, and the use of futures and foresight to really look at how different scenarios will unfold before policies are developed. So we'd certainly applaud the work of the Department of Energy and the Ministry of Infrastructure and UNESCAP for commissioning such a study that now has the opportunity to show where the net zero commitment that is now within the new Climate Change Act, what some of those options for reaching that target look like. And it's also timely in that, as was mentioned, there is a draft national energy policy in place which can be informed by it. So I think the sequencing is very good in that we have commitments that are backed by sound analysis and also from a foresight and sort of futures perspective, which is very much in keeping with the objectives of the Climate Change Policy and Climate Change Act. I'd also like to pick up, on some of the points that the Honourable Minister had made around oil price volatility currently and in the past and also into the future. As a small island developing state, reducing carbon emissions is not only for the purpose of reducing drivers of climate change, it's also about building resilience and reducing that exposure to oil price volatility. So whenever we look at the initiatives and the policies that are promoting renewable energy in the future in Fiji, it's really important to understand it, from the lens of energy security as well. The dependency on fossil fuels and our interlinked economy with resources that exist on the other side of the world and are shipped to small island states create a level of dependence which may not be sustainable into the future. So the more we can be energy secure, the more resilient a country like Fiji can become when disasters strike and when supply chains are interrupted. So while we look at the importance of reducing emissions, we must also look at the benefits that arise from capturing indigenous forms of energy from the sun and from wind power and from all the different options that exist in a country like Fiji. And really, we are blessed with renewable energy assets that we're only just beginning to tap into. So it's pleasing to hear from EFL on the opportunities and plans to expand the renewable energy options that are part of our mix. Just as a further illustration of how we will be able to benefit from some of the or bring some of the policies and objectives into being over the coming years, and what the Climate Change Act will do to help to realize some of the higher ambition elements of the SDG 7 roadmap. Ultimately, the Climate Change Act incentivizes the private sector to become directly engaged in our energy transition. There are aspects of the legislation that seek to increase access to the financing needed to support energy transition. And there's also a greater focus on reporting on climate change risks within company reports and within the financial sector. So as we move forward, both ministries, financial organizations, and companies will need to dramatically scale up their ability to plan their role within Fiji's climate change objectives and priorities. And this is an opportunity for there to be new incentives for the private sector to help to reduce emissions and build resilience. And I think we'll see through the Climate Change Act that there are now legally mandated instruments and mechanisms that should help us to realize some of the higher ambition targets that Fiji has set, and it's pleasing to see that the SDG 7 roadmap has identified the opportunity to reduce emissions by 21% by 2030. So overall, I think this has been a very timely piece of work, and one that has directly influenced a lot of emerging and current policy in Fiji. And I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lan. Thank you for those kind of encouraging words about the roadmap development and the partnership between the Department of Energy, Ministry of Economy, Global Green Growth Institute, and UNESCAP. It was indeed a very interesting and very useful process to go through. It is good to hear about the Climate Change Act that you have mentioned, and it is good to know that the Act will be exploring financing needed for the energy transition, encourage the private sector, which is private sector investment, which is very much needed to going forward with the energy transition. You mentioned about draft national energy policy that is in kind of place, and you may be aware that the roadmap was fortunate to contribute to the development of this national energy policy. You rightly mentioned that reducing reliance on important fossil petroleum fuel is very important because it is kind of poses a great risk to Fiji's energy security, and that Fiji really needs to progress with this. And also roadmap has provided some recommendations. So thank you for all those very useful words. Now I would like to turn to Ms. Katerina Singalakis from the Global Green Growth Institute. And you know that GGGI and ESCAP partnered together to support the government of Fiji in developing this roadmap. So it would be a great pleasure to hear some reflections and experiences of GGGI, as well as other works that GGGI is carrying out on this in Fiji as well as in the Pacific. Thank you. Ms. Singalakis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Honourable Minister, Executive Secretary, Resident Coordinator, Directors, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, good morning and good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation to the Global Green Growth Institute for this launch. Mr. Daniel Munoz-Smith, the country representative for Fiji, couldn't make it today and gives his apologies. For those who don't know me, I'm Katerina Singalakis, and I am the Regional Program Advisor for GGI. I'm also a renewable energy specialist, so the subject today is very dear to my heart. And I've also been involved in the development of the SDG roadmap right from the start. So I'm personally excited to be at the launch today. It's been GGI's great pleasure to support the development of the SDG 7 roadmap in partnership with the Ministry of Infrastructure, the Department of Energy, and UNESCAP. This is a decisive decade for climate action, and the energy transition is part of that. And the achievement of the SDG targets will be critical, not just for climate action, but for human development and safeguarding of the environment. So the development of this SDG roadmap, as others have already said, is very timely and provides the concrete analysis needed for the energy transition in Fiji. A few words about GGI's work in Fiji. GGI's program in Fiji, which started in 2015, had energy as its first and key focus. And we continue to have a strong focus on sustainable energy, including both electricity and transport, and supporting the government to meet its objectives in these sectors. With respect to affordable, clean energy and access to all, GGI has provided technical assistance to the Fiji Rural Electrification Fund since 2018 and is supporting the design and implementation of solar mini-grids over the years, including this year, as well as capacity building to key actors in rural electrification. With respect to increasing renewables in the electricity sector, GGI, as mentioned very kindly by EFL, we've worked closely with EFL over the years and with the Ministry of Economy and the Department of Energy to develop the Ovalau and Taveuni Islands large-scale grid-connected solar PV projects. GGI completed pre-feasibility and feasibility studies, which showed that solar photovoltaics with battery storage was the optimal renewable energy solution to move these islands towards 100% renewable electricity generation. Now, both these projects are funded by the GCF and COICA respectively and under implementation with EFL. And we congratulate the government of Fiji for taking these projects forward. On energy efficiency, GGI has worked with the Climate Change Division of the Ministry of Economy to develop an NDC investment roadmap and project pipeline, including 5 specific projects for the energy efficiency sector. I'm very glad energy efficiency has been mentioned before today by many of the speakers today, because energy efficiency is an important untapped opportunity, not just in Fiji, but across the Pacific. And there are many opportunities available in the buildings, transport and industry sectors, not just to cut emissions, but also to cut costs for businesses and individual households. And that demand side energy efficiency will complement perfectly EFL's energy efficiency on the supply side. So GGI, now we're looking to scale up activities in the sustainable energy sector, building on the projects that I've just mentioned before and others. And also we're now working in electric mobility for Fiji. And one of our key target areas is to do this through increased investment mobilization using GGI's climate finance advisors based here in Fiji as part of the Climate Finance Access Network program. So focus and scale on renewables and energy efficiency will be very important over the next decade. However, I'd also like to mention another topic that others have mentioned. Fiji must also consider its own energy security, and SDG 7 targets can contribute to that in a major way. Energy security is a complex issue. There are many different aspects of energy security, and each can take on a different meaning depending on whether the perspective is from the national or household level, urban or rural, businesses or individuals. To improve energy security, financing and investment is a very important element. Climate finance has become a key part of the investment landscape in renewable energy for electricity in the Pacific, and to some extent in Fiji as well. The 2009 commitment by developed countries to provide $100 billion per year by 2020 to assist developing countries implement adaptation and mitigation actions can contribute to improving energy security development in the Pacific, especially if directed towards both renewables and energy efficiency, plus transport and gender. Also important is a shift in climate finance for Fiji in the energy sector from mitigation to also take in adaptation and development of resilient energy systems. And finance must also be found for securing petroleum supplies while they're still needed and until they are phased out. The amount of climate finance being accessed by Fiji is increasing, but is still well short of the estimated investment needs required to meet its NDC targets, including in the energy and transport sectors. It's also recognized by many that public finance alone, whether domestic or international, stands little chance of meeting climate mitigation and adaptation needs. So as other speakers have already mentioned, involving the private sector will be important, including small and medium-sized enterprises. Investment requirements are high and expected to increase further in the years ahead. In Fiji, the Climate Vulnerability Assessment emphasized the need for future infrastructure investment to ensure resilience to climate change and natural hazards, and indicated that almost Fiji $9 billion will be needed to climate-proof infrastructure, including energy, transport, water, and sanitation over the next 10 years. And as we all know, energy is involved in all of those sectors, whether it's the primary sector or not. Climate-ready energy infrastructure typically adds 3% to upfront costs globally, but typically saves $4 overall for every dollar spent. So it's a good investment. Therefore, to strengthen energy security cost effectively, every energy infrastructure project going forward needs to find the finance to cover this upfront adaptation cost to lower the long-term adaptation cost to Fiji. A regional approach and cooperation on best practices, standards, and other areas could assist in aggregation of projects, increase effectiveness and efficiency, and incentivize private sector investment, particularly for energy and tourism, maritime, and land transport, and in energy efficiency. Thank you so much for your attention today. And GGI would like to extend its sincere thanks to the Ministry of Infrastructure, the Department of Energy, UNESCAP, and UNESCAP for the collaboration on the development of the SDG 7 roadmap. And also a big thank you to all the stakeholders who contributed to the SDG 7 through their comments and inputs throughout the process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Singalakis. So these are very useful information that you have provided. If I can summarize, you have highlighted GGGI's role in supporting the government of Fiji in various aspects, including the energy transition. It was good to hear that GGGI has worked on to support the improving energy efficiency in collaboration with the Climate Change Office. So also good to hear that GGGI is working on electric mobility for Fiji, which is very important, and that it has been also highlighted in the roadmap. The energy security you have mentioned, as it was done by other speakers, the roadmap also pointed to this challenge and demonstrated how this can be somehow addressed. It was also good to hear from you about the needs and options about the climate finance. This is indeed important. Excuse me. So finally, I would like to invite Mr. Sidik Ranjan Bosu from the SCAP Pacific office. This office works closely with the Fiji government and therefore have the capacity and strength to support the government with any pertinent issue like the energy transition and climate change. Therefore, it would be good to hear from Mr. Bosu on the opportunities for future collaborations and support. Mr. Bosu, you have the floor.
Bulabinaka, greetings from Suva. Congratulations to the government of Fiji for launching today the SDG 7 roadmap in collaboration with our office in Bangkok, GGGI, and other partners. It's a great occasion for the government to showcase the leadership, as Fiji is one of those countries in the Pacific and in the world, I believe, to take forward the action, the ambition on the climate issues. So to provide a very specific solution, the SDG7 roadmap shows that there is a not only willingness, but also not the promise as well, but also the action that requires from the member states. And Fiji's ambition, the raising the ambition, showing that in practice is something that must be laudable and highly appreciated, I'm sure, by the international community here in the Pacific as well. As you know, the SCAP Pacific Hub here is in Suva, and we are very delighted to continue to work with the government of Fiji, not only in the issues of climate change and energy transition, but also across all aspects of development. And our program here based out of Fiji is also working with all the other 12 Pacific states, New Zealand, Australia, and 7 other associate members. So, of course, for this very specific work on the SDG7 roadmap, we will be taking forward the recommendations that Mr. Anisi raised. And of course, it was such a delight to hear from the Minister to really showcase the importance of this particular issue and taking very specific actions in many of the recommendations in the work of not only the ministry, but across the ministry. This is one very important example here that we can see that in this particular roadmap, not only the Ministry of Infrastructure or Med Services, but also Ministry of Economy are part of it, and also a climate change, departments, also department here of energy. That really shows the intersectoral connectivity, if you wish, that the partnership across the different ministries. That really shows the whole of government approach here through this particular work on SDG7 as well. So, as our Executive Secretary at the very beginning underscored, that we remain very much committed to continue to work with the government of Fiji and with other member states in the Pacific, so that we not only raise our ambition for 2030 agenda, but also take forward the people's aspiration in the Pacific. Thank you, Mr. Anis. Over to you. And congratulations again, the government of Fiji.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Basu. It was great to hear that your support. You have clearly explained the different options and opportunities on how your office would be able to support the government of Fiji in implementing the recommendations from the roadmap. You have also highlighted the intersectoral connectivity among all the agencies and ministries, which is very important. So roadmap implementation would not be only the sole responsibility of the Ministry of Energy, the Department of Energy, but also will be needing support from other agencies and ministries, including the Ministry of Economy, EFL, and other agencies and ministries. So thank you once again. With this, here we come to an end of the panel discussion. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all the panelists, Mr. Prasad, Mr. Land, Ms. Singalakis, and Mr. Basu for joining this panel discussion and enlightening us with all these valuable information. So thank you. With this, I would like to hand over the floor back to the moderator, Mr. Belena. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you once again, Mr. Anis, for moderating the panel discussion, and also to our distinguished panelists for the very delightful discussion and your discussion that we had on this session. We're now coming to the end of our program today. We have Mr. Hompeng Liu from UNESCO. Will be delivering the closing remark, and will also be followed by our Deputy Director of Energy, Mr. Deepak Chand. So, Mr. Hompeng, the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mika. First of all, let me just congratulate the successful launch of the SDG 7 roadmap for Fiji. And thank you very much, Honorable Minister, to join us for this launch. I really appreciate your continuous support from the beginning, and also your support to the energy program from ESCAP for regional cooperation to serve as chairman of Energy Committee. And this is a great support for our work to promote regional cooperation. So I also want to thank Mr. Mika, the Director of the Department of Energy, and his team for their continued support and guidance through the entire process of the roadmap development. This is a high quality work, but it was only possible due to the outstanding cooperation from the Department of Energy and also other stakeholders, especially during this very difficult time of pandemic. Like we can't travel to Fiji and we can't have these physical meetings with all the stakeholders, but we rely on all of your support on site and provide good information and data and to make this possible. So all the stakeholders, especially Minister of Economy, Energy, and the EFL, and many others support the quality of the roadmap with their constructive input, comments, suggestions, and feedback. This is really a joint effort. The Department of Energy for placing the roadmap in the National Cabinet meeting and ensuring endorsement. I think this is a highlight of this roadmap to get endorsed by the Cabinet, and also this will be a framework for energy transition to support the process and also effort of the government of Fiji. And also I want to thank the Global Green Growth Institute for their collaboration with the ESCAP in supporting the government of Fiji and in the whole process to develop this roadmap. And also the UN Resident Coordinator's Office and our ESCAP office in Fiji for liaison with the government of Fiji for facilitate and the collaboration. So, and also I want to thank my team, actually Anis and also the other colleagues to work, the hard work for the whole process and to discuss, to exchange all the information with the team from Fiji and to develop this roadmap. So the analysis of the roadmap has been used as a foundation to update the national energy policy. This is a great success. I think this is a kind of a result and this kind of roadmap aims to achieve. And I also hope, like during the discussion, during the Honorable Minister's statement, and also the panelists' discussion, there's a great opportunity. We can move forward. And also, I totally agree with the coordinator, resident coordinator, Mr. Sanaka, about the areas he mentioned, in addition to access, renewable energy, energy efficiency. I think he mentioned the most important part is the investment, especially how the private sector investment can support the implementation of the roadmap and also the implementation of the national energy plan. So at the same time, we look at the building back better. This is a great opportunity. We build back better after the pandemic and greener. So with this kind of framework, with the policy recommendations, with identified priorities and the areas, I think the roadmap should not be seen as the end of a collaboration between ESCAP and the government of Fiji. So as my colleague Sudip mentioned, our office in Fiji, in Suva, is ready, and our team in Bangkok is ready. We will continue our support and the collaboration with the government of Fiji and other stakeholders in Fiji to implement this roadmap and to continue the joint efforts. And especially the policy formulation and also the implementation of a recommendation from the roadmap. And we also see, go beyond the 2030 to the middle of the century for the zero emission. That's also the great kind of challenge. So how we just continue this kind of collaboration to address that even after 2030 when we achieve SDG 7 and we go to the carbon neutral, to the zero emissions. I really think that collaboration will continue. So we will welcome further discussions and how ESCAP can support Department of Energy and the government of Fiji to ensure that SDG 7 and also the NDCs are achieved by 2030 and beyond. So finally, I just want to congratulate again for this successful launch of a national SDG 7 roadmap. This could be a very good example for other countries to follow in the Pacific and beyond. We're continuing to work with all the member countries, Honorable Minister, as a chair of the Committee on Energy. So we will just continue this with all the members of ESCAP, and if they are interested in doing this kind of roadmap, we are ready to support. Thank you very much. I will stop here. Back to you, Mr. Mika. Sorry, we can't hear you. Now it's okay. Now it's good.
Thank you. Bula Vinaka to you all from Suva, to our distinguished guest and participant, Honorable Jone Usamate, Ms. Amida, Ms. Sanaka. On behalf of Permanent Secretary and Management, I would like to thank you all for the fruitful and insightful keynote address and welcome remarks on the SDG 7 roadmap, especially for sharing your valuable ideas and knowledge on how this roadmap will assist Fiji in achievement of sustainable goals by 2030. I would like to give special thanks also to Mr. Sundip Rajan Basu, Mr. Krishnil Prasad, Mr. Daniel, Ms. Katrina, for their excellent participant in panel discussion for the energy transition in Pacific in the contents of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement. I would like to give excellent excellent participant and excellent coordination, and a special thanks to Anis Zerman, a PhD Economic Affairs Officer, ESCAPE, for his excellent work in terms of coordination of the whole development of the SDG 7 roadmap. I would also like to thank ESCAPE, Ministry of Economy, and also Climate Change Unit, GGI, for their excellent coordination in terms of development of this SDG Road 7 roadmap. From the SDG 7 roadmap, especially what we could have gathered in terms of Department of Energy, there are four main things, especially the access to energy, energy security, energy efficiency, and clean cooking. In terms of access to energy, it is not only the crucial in supporting the provision of basic needs, such as food, lighting, water, and essential healthcare, but it is the first and foremost a precondition to economic growth, political stability, and prosperity. Also, in terms of energy security, it may also be explained as having a sustainable, affordable, and timely access to energy sources. It is the association between the national security and the availability of natural resources for energy consumption. SDG Road 7 map also has indicated or provided a roadmap indicating that rapid development of renewable energy, energy efficiency, technological diversification of energy sources, research and development, maximize economic efficiency, and developing energy secured policies will result in achieving the significant energy security. With these all words, I would say that we all can agree that this roadmap will maneuver and help Fiji its UN SDG 7 goals as well as the Paris commitment. Without further ado, and on behalf of the management, I would like to thank everyone for their participation and deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Deputy Director of Energy, Mr. Deepak Chand, for those kind words of closing remarks. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like that will bring conclusion to the launch of the SDG roadmap this afternoon. Just before we conclude, can we ask all the participants to please turn on your camera? We want to take a group photo for everyone. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. So with that, that will conclude the program for this afternoon on the official launch for the SDG 7 roadmap. So I would like to thank everyone, distinguished chief guests, and also with every one of you for participating and for your availing yourself for this program this afternoon. So with that, we're sending our gratitude to everyone. Okay, Mr. Mode, and have a blessed afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mika. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.